The Sports Town Podcast.
Hey guys, it's JJ Peters. Thanks so much for listening. If you are listening through an audio platform such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify, don't forget to rate the podcast. It would be greatly appreciated. Also, if you're subscribed, thanks so much. We just reached 500, which is a milestone. Now, the next milestone is get to 1,000, and I'm actually doing a special giveaway. If you are not subscribed and you want to subscribe, once we hit to 1,000 subscribers, I will give all my subscribers a $20 gift card. Now, again, you'll have to give me proof. So basically, screenshot that you're subscribed and send me a DM at sportstown_podcast on Instagram. You can also do it on Twitter, and then, of course, Facebook, but Twitter is going to be at SportsTownPod. But again, $20 Amazon gift card. Don't forget to scan it for proof and DM me at SportsTown_podcast. And again, if you are not subscribed, don't forget to subscribe and also hit the bell for post notifications, and also don't forget to like the video. And if you want to comment, feel free to comment. And again, today is a great day. Again, we have some big interviews. We had some big interviews lined up, and I again greatly appreciate it. First of all, we have Greg Hatlen of the Everybody Loves Racing podcast to talk about NASCAR. What has happened so far? Kyle Larson has dominated, but I wanted to know a little more about it. We talked about it back in February, but we've kind of forgotten a little bit about NASCAR. So today we started talking about NASCAR. Today's episode. And again, thanks for Greg Hatlen. You can check his podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and many others. You can also follow him on Instagram at EverbodylovesRacingPodcast. Also, don't forget to rate his podcast. It would be greatly appreciated. Then we have Tobin Hodges of the Spread the Floor NBA podcast to talk about the conference finals. What has happened in the NBA so far? Now, again, we've been talking a lot about the NBA, but I think it's the conversation has been very interesting, but this one was really good. So he talks also about his podcast, but he mostly talks about what's happened with the Suns, what's happened with the Bucks and Hawks, if the Clippers can come back down. At the time of this recording, the Clippers were down 2-1. So can they win without Kawhi? He also has an interesting fact about Kawhi. Don't forget to check that out. And again, you can find the Spread the Floor NBA podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcast, and many other platforms. And as always, we have the Sports Lightning Round, questions from Instagram, the highlight of the week, poll question, and much more. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at SportsTown_podcast or on Twitter at SportsTownPod. Let's get the show started. And now, onto the highlight of the week.
Points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. Lopez gets inside and stuffs. Beautiful feed from Middleton. Wow. Okay now.
What a dunk from Brook Lopez as he literally just ended Clint Capella's career. The Milwaukee Bucks went on to blow out the Atlanta Hawks 125-91 in Game 2 to nod the series up at 1 game apiece. Now they go into Atlanta at Game 3, which will be on TNT at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, as Marv Albert and Reggie Miller, veteran broadcasters for TNT, were on the call. Alrighty, it's time for a weekly poll question. You can vote every week on Instagram and Facebook at SportsTown_podcast or on Twitter at SportsTownPod. Now, we have 2 questions. Once again, that's what will be going on now. We'll just have 2 questions. And the first question is, did the Blazers hire the right guy to be their next head coach, which they recently just hired Chauncey Billups? Overwhelmingly, you guys said no. So I disagree with you. I thought Chauncey Billups was a good hire. He was a great assistant, but unfortunately, you guys don't think that. And, yeah, it was interesting. But yeah, again, thanks for voting. And also, there was another question as well I had. Who is likely to be traded earlier, or who is likely to be traded before the season starts? Deshaun Watson or Aaron Rodgers? And again, once again, overwhelmingly, you guys said Deshaun Watson, which I would agree. I believe Deshaun Watson, if he is If he pleads innocent, which he probably will, looking like it right now, he'll likely be traded because the Texans I think they want to rebuild. They're not going to be very good next year, even with Deshaun Watson. But again, thanks for voting. You can vote on Instagram at Facebook at sports_podcast or on Twitter at SportsTownPod. And now onto the Sports Lightning Round, your biggest sports stories of the world this week. The Boston Celtics have found their next head coach. The Celtics have hired former Spurs and Sixers assistant Ime Udoka. The news was first reported by Adrian Wojnarowski. New GM Brad Stevens stated he loves the hiring of new head coach Ime Udoka. He also stated, I do think I have a good insight in our team as Danny now steps away. I feel like I've got a good idea of what we will do and what we don't do so well. I've been at this for years. I've been in that locker room with some of those guys for a long time. They'll get to play for a great coach with some similarities, maybe, but also some great new fresh perspectives. That's a good thing, so I'm looking forward to finding that person. The new Celtics head coach is 43 and even played in the NBA. Udoka went undrafted in 2002 and played with several teams before retiring and taking a job as an assistant with the Spurs. He played for the Lakers, Knicks, Trailblazers, Spurs, and Kings. Before the hire, the Celtics considered Chauncey Billups, Jason Kidd, Lloyd Pierce, and multiple others. Udoka impressed Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown at the 2019 FIBA World Cup. If the Celtics want to be successful next season, Udoka will need to have a great relationship with stars such as Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. The coaching vacancies in the NBA are starting to dwindle. The Indiana Pacers have hired Mavs former head coach Rick Carlisle. The deal is reportedly worth $29 million over the next 4 years. The deal was first reported by Tim McMahon of ESPN. This will be Carlisle's second stint with the Pacers. He coached for the Pacers from 2003 to 2007. He also served as an assistant with Indiana under Larry Brown from 1997 to 2000. He helped the Pacers reach the Eastern Conference Finals in 2004, where they lost the eventual champions, the Pistons. The 61-year-old has retired or has a head coaching record of 836 and 689. After being dismissed by the Pacers, he was hired by the Mavs and was there for 13 seasons. The former Celtics led the Mavs to their only championship win in 2011, where they stunned LeBron and the Miami Heat in 6 games. However, Dallas has yet to even win a playoff series since then and has now lost back-to-back postseason opening rounds versus the Clippers. The Pacers fired Nate Bjorkgren after just 1 season, and Indiana failed to make the postseason for the first time since 2010. Jeff Gordon is leaving Fox Sports for Hendrick Motorsports. Jeff Gordon will be second in control at Hendrick Motorsports. The former race car driver has been at Fox since 2016, right after his retirement from driving. The last few months, Gordon had been rumored to leave Fox Sports for Hendrick Motorsports. However, it was not official. Now it is. After the news was broken, Gordon stated, leaving Fox Sports. I cannot thank the entire Fox Sports family enough for the incredible opportunity I've had over the past 6 seasons. I've come to truly appreciate the responsibility of bringing the sport to our fans and the tremendous work that goes into our broadcast each and every week. He also stated about his new job. I love the business side of it. If that day ever comes, I will be truly honored, even though I don't think I could do the job that he's done. I will be truly honored to take that role on. Gordon will officially begin his new job at Hendrick Motorsports on January 1st, 2022. Jeff Gordon is considered one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history. He won 93 career races, which is 3rd of all time. The 49-year-old began his Cup career in 1993 and drove all the way until 2015. The four-time NASCAR Cup winner also has a stake in the number 48 car, which is now being driven by Alex Bowman. NFL teams will be allowed to start wearing throwback uniforms with the helmet starting in 2022. First reported by PFT, the NFL will allow teams to use alternate helmets once again starting in 2022. Such teams as the Buccaneers, Eagles, Titans, Broncos, Patriots, and others could bring back their classic uniforms. Back in 2013, the NFL made a rule that teams could only wear one helmet throughout the season, which pretty much ended teams wearing their throwback uniforms because of the difficulty matching their jerseys. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers owner has finally succeeded. He stated, on the throwbacks, we're constantly on the league's doorstep trying to get them to move so we can wear our throwbacks. We're not there yet, but there are discussions going on, and hopefully at some point in the future that will happen. I know how popular they are with fans. Glazer has pushed the NFL to bring it back and has finally succeeded. However, the NFL did set some rules for the additional helmets. Players will also need to have the helmets fitted. The NFL banned additional helmets back in 2013 to reduce player concussions. However, most fans will be happy that throwback unis will be returning. Another head coaching job in the NBA has been filled. The Portland Trailblazers have hired former player and current assistant for the LA Clippers, Chauncey Billups. The news was first reported by Shams Charania of The Athletic. For the last few seasons, Billups has been an analyst for ESPN and assistant coach for the Clippers. Billups played in the league from 1997 to 2014. He was a 5-time All-Star and was the 2004 Finals MVP. The new Portland coach was the 3rd overall pick in 1997 and played with 5 NBA franchises. The deal is not yet known, but according to ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski, it's a long-term deal. The Trailblazers fired their previous head coach Terry Scott after Portland was bounced in the first round of the playoffs. Trailblazers superstar Damian Lillard gave his blessing on the hiring of Clippers assistant. Portland will need Billups to be the answer, or they could lose out on one of their best players in franchise history to a contender. State had to withdraw because of COVID protocols within the Wolfpack program. With this, Vanderbilt, the defending college baseball champions, will face the winner of Texas versus Mississippi State on Monday. It's really sad to see the Wolfpack have to withdraw after such a great season. NC State eliminated number 1 seed Arkansas and was looking forward to competing in their first championship game ever. NC State had to send one of their players home and only had 13 players available. NC State's athletic director stated, "The last 24 hours have been extremely difficult for everyone involved, and my heart goes out to the student athletes, coaches, and staff of our baseball program. The health and safety of our student athletes and staff will be our unwavering priority. The timing of this is simply devastating for everyone involved, but it doesn't diminish their incredible accomplishments this season." Vanderbilt has won 3 college baseball championships and will look for their 4th this Monday. The Dallas Mavericks have found their new head coach. According to multiple reports, the Dallas Mavericks have hired Lakers assistant Jason Kidd to replace Rick Carlisle on the bench for the Mavs. Kidd played several seasons in the NBA that included 6 years with Dallas. He was a 10-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA First Team, and 4-time NBA All-Defensive First Team. He coached the Nets for 1 season and the Bucks for 4 seasons. His coaching record is 183 and 190. The last 2 seasons, he served as assistant for the Lakers. According to Tim McMahon of ESPN, Dirk Nowitzki and former Mavs coach Rick Carlisle signed off on the hiring. Dirk Nowitzki is serving as a special advisor to owner Mark Cuban. The deal is reportedly worth 4 years. Dallas also hired Nico Harrison to be the team's new general manager, and he will run basketball operations as well. Harrison has been with Nike for 20 years and has gotten many offers from NBA teams to run their basketball operations. Harrison was a big reason why Doncic left Nike for Jordan, and he has a great relationship with the Mavs organization. The last 2 seasons, the Mavs have lost to the Clippers in the opening round of the postseason and have not won a playoff series since their championship run in 2011. Brad Keselowski has officially signed with Roush Fenway Racing to become a driver/co-owner. Keselowski has driven the number 2 car for Team Penske since 2010 and has had 35 career Cup wins. He also won the Cup in 2012. He joined the team in 2009 and drove 3 races in the Xfinity Series. Adam Stern was the first to report the news. During the week of the Indy 500, Roger Penske was asked if Keselowski would drive the number 2 car in 2022. Penske stated, "We really haven't made a decision at this point. We've got a contract with Brad through the end of the year, and he'll make his decision when that's over." The 37-year-old is currently 10th in standing and has 1 win on the year. College athletes can finally start getting paid. Well, sort of. 6 states approved the NIL, which is short for name, image, and likeness. The states are Florida, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, New Mexico, and Mississippi. Universities still will not be paying college athletes, but they can still make money from other things. For example, they can earn cash by signing autographs and endorsement deals. They can also make money from social media and other platforms. NCAA President Mark Emmert said about the NIL, "Although permanent NIL rule changes by July 1st are unlikely due to the legal government, we are working through with divisional government bodies to help interim solutions that will fairly allow student athletes to take advantage of NIL opportunities regardless of the states in which they are enrolled." That was first reported by The Athletic. The new ruling about the NIL will come into effect on July 1st. Many other states are also looking to passing a law that allows college athletes to be paid some way or another. The Seattle Kraken have hired their first ever coach in franchise history. The newest franchise in the NHL has hired David Hakstol. Hakstol was an assistant with the Toronto Maple Leafs for the last 2 seasons. Before that, he had been the coach for the Flyers and the University of North Dakota. He coached for 2.5 years for the Flyers. Before that, he coached at North Dakota for 15 seasons. The 52-year-old helped lead North Dakota to 15 NCAA tournament appearances, 7 Frozen Fours, and 8 Coach of the Year nominations. Hakstol coached many current NHL players such as TJ Oshie, Jonathan Towes, and more. The new head coach of the Kraken was 134, 101, and 2 in his 2.5-year stint in Philadelphia. He was also the first coach in 33 years to make the jump from college to the NHL. During his press conference on Thursday, he said, "Experience is valuable. The first time around when I was in this spot, I had a great deal of experience working with really good, dedicated players and great coaches, but I hadn't had the experience of working at the NHL level. There is a different rhythm to the NHL level in almost every realm, from the 82-game schedule to the pace of the daily business to on ice and on the pace of the game." The Kraken will have their expansion draft on July 21st. Seattle also has the number 2 pick in the upcoming 2021 NHL Draft. And now, on to our interviews with the Everybody Loves Racing podcast and the Spread the Floor NBA podcast. Alrighty, I am pleased to be joined by Greg Hatlen of the Everybody Loves Racing podcast. How's it going, Greg?
It's going good.
Thanks for coming on late notice. But let's first start up. Well, actually, before we start talking about NASCAR, let's first start off with talking about your podcast. I saw the podcast, and it seems like you're almost any type of racing podcast, but I think you talk mostly about NASCAR. But if you want to tell us more about that for the listeners that don't know about it.
Yeah, it basically was a podcast that we started on the fly. We're like I said, we're from Northern California, and we're big Kyle Larson fans. So me and a coworker of mine decided to just start talking about NASCAR. Then we got a friend involved, and the friend got his dad involved, and it started to just become a fun thing that we do every week, where we talk all things NASCAR, all things sports, and it's just fun. A small knit group, like the group of us talking about NASCAR. We're trying to involve it with different fans, get more people involved, and like I said, just spend every day, a couple of days talking about racing whenever we have time. It's always fun to talk about NASCAR.
Yeah, and actually, it's kind of crazy because my grandpa was a huge NASCAR fan back in the day, and he was actually a fan of Bill Elliott. And I think eventually he went to liking Casey Kane when Bill Elliott retired. But yeah, for a while there, I was watching NASCAR. I kind of stopped a little bit. Then when I started doing the podcast, I started watching it again. So speaking of Kyle Larson, you just mentioned it. He's been on a tear this year. 4 or 5 races in a row? Or if you count the All-Star race, which doesn't really count in the point standings. But how come he's had such a good season this year? And were you expecting him to explode like this?
I think most of us have figured Kyle Larson is one of the best drivers in the sport. And when he first came in, a lot of people were comparing him to a Jeff Gordon. And it was always the problem of the equipment that he's in. He's in a Chip Ganassi car, which Chip Ganassi is not known for their top-level equipment. And I think when he got in the Chip Ganassi cars, you saw him getting the best out of the equipment that he was in. You saw in 2017, he got 4 wins. And put it into comparison. Look at what Matt Kenseth did in that 42 car last year. Look what Ross Chastain's doing this year. Although coming off of a second-place finish, you're seeing what the 42 car is capable of compared to what Kyle Larson was getting out of it. And I think Kyle Larson is just one of the best drivers in North America. We say it all the time on the podcast, how he drives people crazy. But I think he finally is in the equipment that he deserves, and you're seeing how good of a driver he is. And the problem I have is that people are saying this is a Hendrick thing, and that Hendrick is top right now. And there's some truth to it. But, I mean, you see these 3 teammates that Kyle Larson has, and he is beating all 3 of them week in and week out. He's way better than Chase Elliott, William Byron, and Alex Bowman. They may be all hot right now, but you're seeing the speed come from Kyle Larson the most.
Yeah, you just mentioned Chip Ganassi Racing, and there's been rumors that Kurt Busch could leave after this year, and I guess there's also been rumors of him retiring as well. Do you think he'll be out of Chip Ganassi Racing next season?
I do. I think that they'll probably. I think 2311 has got a lot of rumors going with Kurt Busch, and they could use a veteran like Kurt Busch to put with Bubba Wallace, and maybe that's the next step you take with Bubba Wallace, because you're seeing. I mean, they're a new organization who needs a veteran that knows the experience in NASCAR, knows how to get you to the next level, and who better than Kurt Busch? I mean, Kurt Busch is one of the smartest drivers out there, and he could really help push Bubba Wallace to the next level.
Yeah, and it's just kind of crazy with how well Kyle Larson has been this year. And, of course, Kurt Busch, what he hasn't won since it's been a while. Well, I guess he won at Vegas last year, but he's been really quiet lately. And, of course, he won at Daytona back in 2018. But it would be fun to watch, especially if Team 2311 could add another FIA or another car to that field, because I think, as you mentioned, it would really help Bubba Wallace. Speaking of Bubba Wallace, do you think he'll get a win this year?
No. If it would, it'd become from like a Talladega or a Daytona, something like that. Because, I mean, it's, as much as people knock Bubba Wallace, it's really hard for these companies. And you see it year in and year out. You can't really go in the past and look at a new organization that came out. I mean, you saw Ray Evernham do it. And all these companies that just start an organization, it takes them a couple years to become a suitable competitive car. I mean, I know that they got funding. I know they got Joe Gibbs equipment. but it's still, they're not quite there. They're still learning the pieces. And you heard, because of the pandemic, they were working out of Mike Wheeler's shop at one point in the season. So, I mean, this is still a fluid progress for 2311 Racing. So, I mean, I think eventually Bubba Wallace is going to be a competitive driver. I don't know how top level he is, but I think he'll eventually get a win, but I don't see it coming this year.
Yeah, it'll definitely be exciting to watch if he does get a win, at least next year, because again, as you mentioned, it's going to be hard for him to win. The defending champ was supposed to have a really good season. It's been kind of a disappointment. I know he does have a win, Chase Elliott, but he got DQ'd last week. What do you think is the problem with Chase Elliott, and do you think he can win the Cup again this year?
Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily a problem with Chase Elliott. I think his problem is his teammate right now. I mean, if you look at what Chase Elliott's had this year, he's had second, and then he got disqualified this week. But, I mean, he's been running good. He's just, I mean, it took him a while to get up to where he's at right now, because at the beginning of the season, he was kind of sputtering a little bit, had a good run at Martinsville, and then you saw him turn it on. I think a lot of people were wondering if he was kind of sandbagging, holding back a little bit for the playoff push like you saw last year. And this year, I mean, ever since about Coda, you've really seen a different Chase Elliott. He turned it on and was finishing second, and he did it at Dover. And he's just been running into his teammate. I mean, Kyle Larson's been so hot, it's hard to be the best car when you got your teammate out there who's the best driver out in the field right now.
With Jimmy Johnson retiring last year, and it seemed like Chase Elliott was going to be the face of NASCAR, but right now it looks like Kyle Larson's going to be it. Who do you think has a better chance to be the face of NASCAR, Chase Elliott or Kyle Larson?
You know, I've been wondering that for a while, because I've seen these two as pretty equivalent drivers for years. When he was in Ganassi, Chase Elliott was always the guy I compared to Kyle Larson. And right now, I think Kyle Larson there's really nobody who can touch him out there. It's crazy because, like I said earlier, they're in equal equipment. It's no longer an instance of, well, Kyle Larson's in a Chip Ganassi equipment and Chase Elliott's got the Hendricks. Now they're in equal. Now you see him on an equal playing field, and Kyle Larson is just. I mean, it's not even comparable. I don't think. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like Kyle Larson is. And I'm trying not to be a homer here, but it looks like Kyle Larson is the class of the Hendrick field right now.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. And that, like I said, Hendrick Motorsports has just been dominating this year. Alex Bowman and William Byron, I believe, both have 2 wins on the year. So it's going to be.
Byron's got 1, and
okay,
Bowman has
1.
2. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. I got a little confused. So another driver that I thought, I mean, why do you think Denny Hamlin has not been able to take a checkered flag yet this year?
That's the $1 million question. Him and Kevin Harvick. I mean, both of those two last year dominated the 2020 season. And we're halfway through the 2021 season, and here we are. Neither one have a win. And I know that Stuart Haas's reasoning, or at least the reason that they say, is because of the rule change that NASCAR's made after what they were finding in the rule book to give him an edge last year. And I think a lot of people are saying that's what Hendrick's doing right now, is they found the edge in the rule book, because that's what NASCAR is based off of, as much as people don't want to say it. I mean, you hear people like Dale Jr. say that, I mean, I don't want to say it, but they're cheating. I mean, at the end of the day, it's NASCAR is whoever finds the gray area in the rule book the best, is that's where you see the speed come from. And that's why in a season, you'll see people go hot and then they'll go cold. And when NASCAR finds what they're doing, and I think that's what happened to Stuart Haas. Stuart Haas got busted what they were doing, and it got shut down. Now you're not seeing them as competitive as they've been in the past. And they're a big organization. They're good. They'll get back to where they were. But for Denny Hamlin, you've seen Joe Gibbs just as a whole kind of take a fall back. I mean, besides a little bit of a run that Martin Truex has had here and there, he's fallen back a little bit. And, I mean, it's crazy to say, because Kyle Busch seemed like the 4th best car at Joe Gibbs a couple weeks ago. And now I think he's the best. And Denny Hamlin has such a good run at one point in the season that he is still the points leader. And I find that hard to believe, because you've seen the run Kyle Larson had, but yet Denny Hamlin's still winning by 10 points.
Yeah, it's crazy. And again, I think, and it's kind of crazy too. Denny Hamlin has yet to win a NASCAR Cup. I mean, he had a chance last year. I mean, he's had so many chances. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens toward the end of the stretch. If we go, let's rewind back to last year. Kevin Harvick dominated the whole season, and then he had some bad luck, and he ended up not even placing in the championship four. Do you think NASCAR needs to change their playoff system?
Okay, that's a tough question because I was saying this in my last podcast was that it is so when you're not a fan of the driver who dominated, like Kyle Larson at this point, if he were to lose the championship because something happens in Phoenix, it would break your heart because he's probably the most deserving driver right now. I mean, the way NASCAR has it set now, Kyle Larson can win every single race from here on out, and then if he loses in Phoenix, if something fluke happens in Phoenix, he loses the championship. And I mean, that sucks. I mean, it really does. And I know probably when you grew up too. When I grew up, it was the Winston Cup Series where it was based off of points, where they would give a point system, and it would be that way throughout the season. And you would know who the champion is 2 weeks before the championship race is, which also sucks because then you're racing 2 races and the season's over. So I mean, it's a fine line. NASCAR's got a tough situation there. I don't know what the right answer is, but I think either way, you're going to get people not liking the result, especially if, like last year, Kevin Harvick deserved to win the championship. Denny Hamlin deserved to win the championship, but it was Chase Elliott, the wild card, who turned it on late in the season. So, like I said, it's just a fluid situation. Either way, you're gonna have people disappointed with it because the way it was can suck, and the way it is can suck.
Yeah, I guess so. It's kind of a lose-lose situation because I think with Jeff Gordon has 4 Cup championships, and he could have probably won 6 or 7 if the playoff system format wasn't in when he was racing. So, yeah, again, it's kind of a lose-lose situation. So, did you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, I think you hit it right there. I think a lot of the reason why they have these rules right now are because of how hot Jimmy Johnson was and how hot Jeff Gordon were in the 2000s. That NASCAR said, okay, we got to do something because these guys are just dominating the races right now to where it's not even fun, where you'd see these guys win the championship before the race was over. And I know they went to the chase system in like 2004 with Nextel. And you just see every year they kept changing it to where at this point, I just want to see them stay consistent because we saw the chase, then we saw the tournament that they got now. Then they went with the stages. It's just, I want to see them stick with one thing. If this is what they're going to go with, just let's stick with it. Let's roll with this. Stop changing things up. That's a problem I've had with NASCAR in the last couple of years is they try to change things up because they hear what people want on Instagram and Twitter. And it's just, let's just stay with the way it is. Let's not make things confusing because it's very hard to understand right now. I try to explain it to people who don't really watch the sport. And it's hard to explain the stages and the points and the playoff points. And it's just really confusing. It's just, let's stick to one way and stop making this diluted.
You just mentioned the stages, and not a lot of the hardcore NASCAR fans were very excited about the stage they made a few years ago. Do you think they should keep that, or do you think they should just get rid of the stages altogether?
I would have never been a fan of bringing it in. But since you brought it in, let's just stick with it. Let's let it play through because I'm tired of seeing all these changes that NASCAR makes to try to make the racing more interesting. I get what their purpose was because at the end of the day, the only part of the race that matters is the last lap. So NASCAR wanted to change that a little bit and break it into 3 segments to where there's more racing going on, more competitiveness, more reason to watch the whole entire race. And I think that people have a shorter attention span to where this is now more interesting if you're watching a shorter race broken up. But like I said, if it were me, if I were NASCAR, I would have never touched the way they had it. I thought that NASCAR was great. The way when I grew up watching it, when it was just points racing, the way Dale Earnhardt used to race, Richard Petty used to race. I mean, that's the racing I like to watch. But like I said, they made it this way. They made their bed. Let's just lay in it. Let's stop changing it up every 5 years. Stop making it confusing. If you want to do stage races, I'll get on board. But I just don't want to see this change every couple of years.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think, they do need to make it more. They need to stay consistent because if you stay consistent, I think you'll keep fans and you'll gain other fans as well, which is ultimately what they want to do. Is there another driver that no one's really talking about that you could see making a run and maybe even possibly winning the Cup this season?
They're always out there. I mean, there's always that guy like Chase Elliott that you could really see make a run. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I never can give up on Denny Hamlin. I feel like Denny Hamlin's holding something back. Martin Truex is a wild card. But I can't see it coming from anybody but Hendrick or Joe Gibbs. I mean, to me, Penske, maybe a Joey Logano, but Ryan Blaney is kind of who Ryan Blaney is, I think, where he's a good driver, but I don't think he's going to be a top tier like that. And I think Brad Keselowski is kind of on his way out. I think that there's something to those rumors of him going to Roush Fenway. And I think that's kind of, you know how it is when the drivers have a new deal, you kind of see them fall back a little bit because they're let out of what's going on, the fluid situation, because I think he's moving on to a new organization. And I think that's kind of where Brad Keselowski is right now.
Speaking of Brad Keselowski, who do you think will replace him if he does leave Team Penske?
I think they'll probably put the 2-car. I think they'll get that 2-car to Austin Cindric. And I think they'll keep Matt DiBenedetto in the 21, which, man, that would be the best thing for Matt DiBenedetto, because I think it's not pretty if he goes into free agency this year with no funding, no sponsors. He's not winning races. I don't know who really would want to take a chance on him. I know he's got a big fan base, which blows me away that he has no funding, because you would think the fact that he's got a solid fan base, he could find some sponsorship, but it's just been a problem that's cursed Matt DiBenedetto his whole career. He's such a likable guy, such a nice guy. And he's finished second, I think 3 or 4 times, and just can't punch that ticket, can't get the win. And he's a 15th, 16th place driver. And there's nothing wrong with that. Drivers make their careers off of being like that. But, you have to have funding, and he doesn't. And I'd be really concerned if Matt DiBenedetto becomes a free agent.
Yeah, we'll definitely be pulling for Matt DiBenedetto. There's one guy that's not quite in the Cup Series yet that I think will be a star, and that is Ty Gibbs, Joe Gibbs' grandson. It's his first time he runs in the Xfinity Series. He wins. Do you think he'll win a few cups once he gets into that series when he gets older?
Absolutely. That guy's the future of NASCAR. I know exactly where you were going when you said that. Yeah, I haven't seen a kid like this in a while. Like I said, I've watched NASCAR for 20-something years now, and I can't remember seeing a guy like Ty Gibbs come out of the Xfinity program like this. And like you said, this is his first season. This isn't even a full-time season. And when he races, you're seeing him competitive week in, week out. And I think the ceiling is his potential. He's got, like you said, he's got that spot. He's going to get in with a company like Joe Gibbs. His grandpa is Joe Gibbs, so he'll get in. He'll find his way into the sport. He'll probably do a year or two in Cup or in an Xfinity before he moves on to Cup. But man, it's gonna be fun to watch what his career does. The fans glommed onto him like none other. People love Ty Gibbs, and it's great to see, because the thing that NASCAR lacks a lot is that superstar in NASCAR where people want to go see, where you're like, oh my God, he races in the series. And it used to be Dale Jr. People used to really want to go to the sport to see Dale Jr. And it's kind of Bubba Wallace now, but when you don't follow NASCAR, then you go to a NASCAR event to see Bubba Wallace, it's kind of a letdown. But with a guy like Ty Gibbs, I think if Ty Gibbs reaches the potential that I think a lot of us see for him, I think this is going to be a big thing for NASCAR. This is a big ticket for NASCAR right here, to get a guy like Ty Gibbs to reach the potential. And like I said, I really think he will, because he's got his grandpa, who's the owner of a top-tier organization in NASCAR. The only problem is, where's he going to ride? Because you only are allowed 4 charters per team, and they've got Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, and Christopher Bell, who they see a lot of potential for. So where are you going to find a spot in there? Maybe it's a 2311 who's got they could find a spot for him, because they're basically a United charter there. They got an organization commitment with each other right there. So maybe they can put him into a 2311 car, or maybe a Denny Hamlin or Martin Truex retires, because again, they are 40-something years old. So maybe they do back out, but that's for the future. But man, I really see big things for Ty Gibbs.
Yeah, it's just so crazy with how young he is, and yet he's able to win like his first Xfinity Series race. That was just crazy, especially at Daytona. So again, I think I can't wait to watch once he gets up there, and even you could probably see him running a few times in the Cup Series before he becomes full time. So it will definitely be fun to watch him and his career. So as we end the interview, again, thanks for coming on. Is there anything else you have in store for your podcast, all that, so the listeners can know more about it?
Yeah, no, we're working on a lot of things right now. We're working, like I said, it's our first year doing the podcast. We're still working out the glitches a little bit, and we're working on getting Kyle Larson on the show right now. One of the co-hosts grew up with Kyle Larson's mom. Like I said, that's the fun thing. We're all different ages. We got 20. I'm 25. my co-host is 32. We got one that's 65. We're all different ages. We've seen all different eras of NASCAR, so it's a lot of fun. And like I said, he grew up with Kyle Larson's mom, so he's got a connection. So we're working on getting Kyle Larson on the show, which will be a lot of fun. And we got a lot of fun things planned. So I look forward to doing the podcast more and having some fun talking about NASCAR.
That is super exciting, especially if you can get a guy like Kyle Larson that's just on fire right now, and maybe most likely at the now he's going to win. Before we end the interview, do you have a prediction on who will win the Cup this season? It's probably Kyle Larson, but
I'm a pessimist at heart, man. As much as I'm a Kyle Larson fan, like I said, I'm from Northern California. That makes me a Sacramento Kings fan. I know how bad things are. Kyle Larson can win every single race from here on out, and I'm not picking Kyle Larson to win the championship. Things don't go good for me, okay? But I'm gonna say it's gonna come from a guy like, man, you put me on the spot. Chase Elliott could be a guy to watch, and obviously Kyle Larson is the guy that I think a lot of people are saying right now is expected to win. But NASCAR is a 36-week season. You're gonna see Hendrick drop down a little bit. You're gonna see teams come up to their level. It's a long season. Teams are going to figure things out. And at the end of the day, I'm going to go with the guy who is better in leadership and a championship. I'm going to say Mark Truex Jr. wins championship this year.
All right. Thanks for coming on. It was great talking NASCAR. We haven't talked about NASCAR for a while, so this was great. Again, check out the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Where can we find you on social media? Is it just Instagram, or where else can we find you?
Yeah, I'm just on Instagram right now. It's at Everybody Loves Racing.
Okay. All right. Thanks for coming on, and definitely hope the rest of the NASCAR season is as exciting as it was in the early of the season. So thanks for coming on again.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. I am pleased to be joined by Tobin Hodges of the Spread the Floor podcast. How's it going, Tobin?
It's going pretty good, man. Glad to be here.
All right. Thanks for coming on late notice. Let's first start off to talk about your podcast. I was listening to the latest episode about your lottery, and you were talking about the NBA draft lottery, and you were live, and you actually interviewed guests. So I thought that was pretty cool. But the one thing I took away from it was the Pistons finally got lucky.
Yeah.
What did you think about the lottery? And do you think there'll be any surprises in the draft this year?
You know, the lottery is always one of my favorite nights because you just never know what's going to happen. And then immediately after the lottery, like there's just a ton of speculation and all kinds of things going on that, you know, people trading out, people trading in, and who's going to go where. And then players start getting in and talking about how, you know, they don't want to go here. They're not going to work out for this team. And so it's always a wheels off night, which is just so fun. And then the second, I think while we were recording, when the Raptors jumped, I mean, we kind of lost it, and, you know, cause that's always just, you know, great entertainment for us as big NBA fans. You know, we have a buddy that listens to our show. He's like one of our longtime listeners, and his name is Jacob, and he's been a diehard Pistons fan for a very long time, and just unfortunately been going through the ringer here these last few years. So it was good to see him excited. And but immediately after they won the lottery, you started seeing reports that Cade Cunningham, you know, they might not take Cade because he's not a fit, and so he immediately went from like just happiness to like utter, you know, sadness of why are we doing this to ourselves? So I mean, it's, you know, that's the great thing about the lottery is that it's happiness and just utter despair all at once. And so, but we're, you know, I'm happy for the Pistons, and I personally, like, our show is a full NBA show, but we're based in Dallas, and so we're big time Mavs fans. We were very thrilled that most of the top picks went to the Eastern Conference, so the Western Conference will stop being so dang hard for us. So.
Speaking of the Mavericks, it's Rick Carlisle is now gone. He's in Indiana. But before we talk about the coaches hiring, what do you think the Mavs will do this offseason? Because they got to find some help for Luka, it seems like.
Dude, this is not so little inside baseball. This is what is it, Thursday night, and it's now breaking today that Jason Kidd is the front runner for our next head coach, which I could be way off, but I know that his first two stints went very poorly, and he's a former player of ours, obviously a great, won a title with us. We love Jason Kidd, the player. I'm not so thrilled about Jason Kidd, the coach. So I'm not in the greatest Mavs mood right now to answer this question, but, you know, so like if that's who they end up going with, I'm going to try to get my goggles on and try to be happy about it. But the biggest thing is that for the last however many years, the Mavs have kind of had cap room and not done a whole lot other than just get some role players or they're trying to convince us that these signings are good and they end up being DeLon Wright and not good and, stuff like that. And so the main thing is that I'm trying to take as a positive is that we are actually doing something by shaking up our front office. And then Rick Carlisle leaving is, giving us a shakeup that we weren't expecting. But I think that new voices in the locker room and new voices in the front office is going to be good for us. Now, the next step is get Luka to sign that extension. And then you basically, in my eyes, have 2 to 3 years to get a team around him that he thinks is worth staying here before he asks for a trade. And so I know we've been linked to Spencer Dinwiddie already. There's all kinds of I'm a big trade machine guy and big rumors guy. So I have 800 threads in my brain going right now of what we could possibly do. I do think that Kristaps is probably staying here now that Carlisle's gone, and I'm talking myself into that being a good thing because Carlisle just hasn't used him very well. But I also think he's going to be better next year wherever he goes, but that may not be a second star better. So I think that once the coach is hired and once the GM is hired, we'll have more of an idea of where we're probably headed. But like I said, the main goal is take the next 3 years to really prove to Luka that you can build a team around him so he doesn't ask for a trade and James Harden out of here. So.
Yeah, and I think what the takeaway I took from the Mavs and Clippers series is, number one, Luka needs help. And I feel it's now been, 10 years the last time the Mavs actually won a playoff series, which is crazy. And I don't know if Porzingis is the answer, but it seemed like he was not used at all. And a lot of times what I also took away from that series was he would never go down in the paint.
Yeah.
He's 7'1", and I understand he's a good spot, just a good shooter, but at the same time, he did take advantage of that. And plus the Clippers went really small, so he could have probably done something like that, but we'll see what happens with Porzingis.
The thing is about Porzingis is that he's the scapegoat that all the fans around here want to make the bad guy, but we weren't using him. We weren't getting him the ball. We weren't putting him in a position to be successful. And on top of all that, if you want to be mad about something, be mad at Josh Richardson. He was trash this year. I mean, he just absolute trash. Didn't do what we needed him to do. He didn't play defense. He didn't hit shots. And, Rick Carlisle didn't seem to scheme very well for Kristaps. And he's just not the player. He's going to have a full offseason for the first time with our team this year. So, this is kind of put up or shut up time for him, but I've already kind of resigned myself to the fact that he's not going to be a number 2. We really need him to kind of be a number 3 guy and then get somebody else in here to kind of take that load off Luka. And I don't know, there's all kinds of names that could be before the Bulls got hot in the beginning of the year. Zach LaVine was a name that was kind of thrown around. And I was like, okay, somebody to score the ball and take some of the load off of KP and Luka would be great. But I think that if we just have to temper our expectations of him and say he's more like a 3 than he is a 2. But we need to get a 2 to come in here pretty soon. So.
Yeah, I think the free agency class isn't very big, and I think Kawhi Leonard is the best free agent, but I think he's got an option, and I'm assuming he'll stay with the Clippers this year or next year. But I mean, they could do some trading. It'd just be, I'm trying to think of all the trade scenarios that could happen as well. It's going to be interesting to see what the Mavericks do, though. Yeah. I'll definitely keep an eye on that, and it's going to be, I think, we're going to see a lot of trades during the offseason. As we talk about the Mavericks, Rick Carlisle, the former coach of the Mavs, took the job with the Indiana Pacers. At the time of this recording, it was on Thursday, so it was just a few hours ago. This is his second stint with Indiana, which I actually did not know. What do you think about the hiring, and can the Pacers finally get over the hump of being just an average team to a pretty solid team?
Well, the thing is, Carlisle was there in the he was in the early 2000s, and he was the coach when they had the Malice at the Palace, against the Pistons. So he's he was pretty much a legend there already, and he had them at a pretty high level with Ron Artest and Steven Jackson back in the day. So he's already kind of coming in with good graces, which is probably good. The thing is, look, I mean, I love Rick Carlisle. He's done wonders for the Mavs. He won us a title. But he's also not the nicest person. He's kind of a butthead. He doesn't, he has his ways. He does what he wants to do. And that might be what they need, because they're a pretty young team and they have some locker room issues that just kind of, I mean, we saw, you saw on the sideline this year with their coaches, and there's been rumors that Domantas Sabonis has had some issues with the locker room. He's going to come in there and at least shape that up, but it also means that they might have to get rid of some people, or some people might want to get out because they don't want to work hard for him. because he's very old school. He is a top 3 X's and O's coach, so he's instantly going to make their in-game coaching significantly better than they were anytime in the last few years. But again, like, he's going to come in and do what he wants to do, and so it's one of those like get in or get out moments for a lot of those players, more than likely.
I think the first thing the Indiana Pacers are, I think the Pacers are still like, I think the Pacers made a bad decision last year of firing Nate McMillan, and 100%. You see what the success he's doing with Atlanta. So it was kind of crazy how they did. They signed him to a extension and then they fired him. So it was just weird how that happened. But
and that's the thing, is that those players, okay. Like we talked about that when it happened, is that those players didn't want Nate to leave, and then you bring in another coach that has no ties to them. So I mean, this whole year has been garbage for them, because they just kind of like took the wind out of their sail. And Nate McMillan has had a lot of success as a head coach, but he's also had a lot of first round playoff exits. And this is the first time he's really had success in the playoffs. So like, I understand as Indiana, like, why you would want to take that next step, but you don't take the coach away after you give him an extension and then replace him with an unproven coach. Like, if you would have went to Rick Carlisle from Nate McMillan, like, I think you could probably argue like, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, hopefully this is a nice reset for them. I actually really like Indiana. Miles Turner is from my hometown, my area. And so like, we like to see him succeed. And so I'm hoping that they kind of get a little bit of a rebound from this.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Indiana, but I think, again, they have a lot of talent over there. They have like Miles Turner, they have Sabonis, they have Malcolm Brogdon. I mean, they have a lot of options there in Indiana, so we'll see what happens there. The Boston Celtics have a new coach as well. I didn't really know much about him. What do you think about the hiring, and do you think the Celtics can take that next step up? Because it seems like they're kind of going, it's a downward trend for Boston.
I think it's a fantastic hire. Ime Udoka has been a name that's been on the interview list for, it seems like, the last 5-6 years. He's been like the top assistant named for almost every head coaching vacancy, and this has been a long time coming. He should have been hired more than a few years ago, but I think this is a good situation. He's got some young talent that he can work with, and I do think that Brad Stevens being in the personnel, like in the front office, will help him, because hopefully Stevens can help him as a first-time coach kind of learn the ropes and be a mentor to him. I know the players love Udoka because he's done some Team USA stuff as well. And so I think this is a great hire. I know Chauncey Billups and Jason Kidd were rumored there, and I think that Billups might have been okay. Kidd would have been a disaster, I think. But I think this is one of those moves that will help them with their younger players, the core of the team. And supposedly they asked Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Marcus Smart what they thought, and they all signed off on it. So that's always a good step forward for an organization.
Well, his history is pretty good. I mean, he was an assistant with San Antonio for a while. He was with Philly and Brooklyn the last 2 years. And he was a former player as well. So he has that experience. He's been in basketball for a while. So I think, again, it's probably a really good under the radar hire. And I feel like it's more of a Brad Stevens hire because, as you know, Stevens isn't the most outgoing person. He's pretty quiet. And so I think this fits well with what the Celtics want to do. Let's now jump onto the conference finals. The Suns, at the time of this recording, are up 2-0. No Kawhi, and it doesn't seem like he's coming back at all. Do you think the Suns can get a sweep, or do you think somehow the Clippers will win at least 1 or 2 games, maybe even the series, which I don't think can happen, but what do you think? Man,
the Suns they're a fun, explosive team, and if you listen to our show, you know that we are not we don't really like Chris Paul in our area, and we've had some issues with him in the past and some baggage for him, but I mean, you can't discount the amazing things he's done with the Suns, and Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, all of these players are just playing at the top level. Cameron Payne's been out of his mind. I don't think Kawhi's coming back. I think Kawhi has an injury that's going to take him, like we were talking about earlier. I think he's going to opt into LA because I think he's going to be out most of the year next year with an ACL injury. And so I don't think he's coming back. I think they're just kind of holding that card still, so that way the Suns don't really know what to plan for. CB3 is coming back tonight from health and safety protocols, and so I think there's a good chance that this is going to be a gentleman's sweep. I think that the Clippers will still win, just because I'm sure Paul George will probably go off here in the next couple of games. But I mean, I'm pretty sure the Suns are getting close to punching their ticket for their finals So the first time since 92 that they've been to the finals.
Yeah, it's been a while. And of course, I mean, the Clippers had their chance in game 2. I mean, Paul George missed 2 free throws there at the end. They had a chance to win. I mean, I think that was, Paul George has got to be more consistent. And of course, he showed well, especially in game 5 and 6 without Kawhi. But I think if the Clippers at least win 1 or 2 games, Paul George has got to be consistent. So we'll see what happens. But the Suns are a very fun basketball team. How impressed have you been with Devin Booker? Because I've been impressed. I'm assuming you are, but what have you thought about Booker's performance?
One of the things about Booker before this year was one of the knocks on him was just, heavy stats, no results, or heavy stats, no wins, and just heavy stats, bad team. And that's been a fair, assumption for now. But I think what this year and last year has shown us that he is a great asset to have on your team. And, from game 1 in the playoffs this year, he has been unstoppable, very reliable, just willing to, cutthroat mentality, willing to take the big shots, willing to do what's necessary for the team to win. And he's been incredible. He's one of my favorite players to watch. Him and DeAndre Ayton both in their first playoff stint are really showing off and really showing out and making sure that they are showing the Phoenix faithful that they are here to stay. Because a lot of players in their first playoff stints, especially with high expectations, they tend to at least, fold every few games or whatever. But they, every single game, they come to play and they're doing some things that help the team win, which is a big reason why they've only lost, I think, 3 games in the playoffs, because they lost 3 to the Lakers and they swept the Nuggets. So, yeah, it's just unreal what they've been doing and really, really awesome to watch them play.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Again, Devin Booker has been great. DeAndre Ayton, people didn't really know how good he was. And I think this year he's finally shown that he was worth, or for the most part, he was worth the number 1 pick. Of course, they probably should have drafted Luka or Trae Young, but I definitely think DeAndre Ayton.
You can't really fault them for that because they needed Ayton was the consensus number 1 then, even with Luka, and there's nothing wrong with DeAndre Ayton being an acceptable, return in that, because he's been great and he's showing now in the playoffs that he's worth the pick. And I think that he's done a good job of changing his role and accepting his role of being what he is, because the first couple of years he kind of showed a little bit of immaturity in his decisions, and I think him getting suspended, I think it was 2 years ago he got suspended, and I think he's grown up a lot from that and just kind of accepted his role of what he needs to do, and that's a big reason why they've been so successful this year.
And I think Monte Williams has done an excellent job in Phoenix. Do you think I agree. I agreed with the coach of the year. I think Tom Thibodeau should have won it, but do you think Monte Williams should have won it over Tom Thibodeau? The thing is
Thibodeau did a great job of taking a team that should have been in the cellar of the Eastern Conference and finishing 4th in the Eastern Conference, but Monty Williams is definitely a better in-game coach than Thibodeau is. Thibodeau had a lot of issues with adjustments in late game calls and stuff, and that's one of the reasons why the Knicks got knocked out, is because he couldn't adjust in the playoffs to defensive schemes changing. And Monty Williams, last game 2 was a perfect example of whenever the refs were reviewing a play, he took that time to draw an out of bounds play to get them a game win with 0.8 on the clock. And that kind of stuff is what coach of the years, what deserves coach of the year. And so I don't have a problem with Thibodeau winning the coach of the year, but I think Monty Williams, definitely, if he would have won it, I would have definitely been okay with that as well.
Yeah. I mean, it was a pretty hard selection this year with so many good coaches there were. So, before we start about the Eastern Conference, it seems like Ben Simmons, there's been so much rumors that he's going to be traded. Do you think he's out of Philly after this season, or do you think the Sixers will give him 1 more year?
I think he has to be out. I think that the immediate reaction after the last game was Embiid and Doc Rivers, without any restrictions, just went after him in their comments, and not in a malicious way, but there was comments made that show that they are done dealing with this. And then Ben Simmons came out and said, they asked him if he's going to work on his game, work on his shot. And his quote was, "I am who I am." And that's just it's not really the quote you want from a guy who's supposed to be your first or second star on the team. And then the next day, Doc came out and said that they have a plan in place to make him better fit the scheme and stuff like that, which to me just says that was Daryl Morey and the Sixers front office going out there and saying, "Hey, you just tanked his trade value. You need to get it back up. Go out there and say he's staying so we can," because I just don't see any world where he can succeed with Embiid. And I've said that for a couple years now. Like they always seem to play better whenever one of them is hurt, in the past. And this year's kind of an exception to that until the playoffs. But man, I think he's got some hangups that he just needs a fresh start probably. But him and Embiid cannot be on the same court together. They don't play well off of each other. And Embiid has asserted himself as the guy that needs to stay there, this year and the year before. And so I think he's going to have to go. I hope that they trade him for his sake, because I think that he will be better off in a situation where he can get a fresh start. I don't think his trade value is very high, so that could be what keeps him in Philadelphia probably.
Yeah, and it's going to be just a wild offseason I mentioned earlier as well. I think Doc Rivers now kind of has a history of blowing leads or just getting beat by teams they shouldn't. Why do you think Doc Rivers has such a history? I know he doesn't like to adjust very well, and we saw that last year in the bubble. But why do you think Doc Rivers has not been able, or why does he, or I'll just ask him, why has he struggled so much in the postseason ever since he won the finals in 2008?
I mean, you just said it. Like, he doesn't adjust very well. Doc Rivers is fantastic at getting a team prepared and getting a team cohesive. He's a great players coach. The players love playing for him. Every team he leaves, they typically like speak fondly of him. I think in 2008 when he won the title with Boston, that's just a lot of that is you have players like Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Rajon Rondo just going out there and winning the series. I don't want to say in spite of Doc, but they don't need as much adjustments. Whereas you do have, especially in today's game with the amount of research and technology we have, you need a coach that can change on the fly or in between games. And Doc's never really been that guy. Like, it's just, he's great at getting a team playing to a high level. You can't discount what he's done this year with Philly, but this is the same old story of you get in the playoffs, the game changes. It's the same reason that Rudy Gobert is phenomenally defensively the whole regular season. And then whenever we get in the playoffs, it just the game changes and he gets played off the court, because they can't have him. If you put 5 ball handlers out there, he can't guard the ball handler. And so Doc Rivers kind of has the coaching version of that. Of he does a great job in the regular season. He gets the team, prepared very well. But whenever he has to adjust when playoff basketball changes some things, it just doesn't typically go well for him unless the player takes over.
Yeah, I would agree. So let's jump on to the Western Conference, or not the Western. Let's jump on to the Eastern Conference Finals. Again, at the time of this recording, the Hawks just beat the Bucks. Were you shocked by that? Because I thought Milwaukee was going to take Game 1.
I think I said Bucks in 6 on our podcast. That was my prediction, and my co-host said Bucks in 5. So I think we were both a little shocked that they came out. But listen, man, like we have from the start of the season completely underestimated the power of the Hawks. And when I told him, we actually were hanging out last night watching the games. I said to my co-host, I said, they are playing with house money at this point. Like, if they could lose the rest of their games and lose the series 4-1, and this is considered an extremely successful season, and they're not afraid of anybody. Like, they're coming out. Trae Young's not afraid of anybody. Capella's been great, and they're doing this without DeAndre Hunter, and now Bogey's a little banged up. So it's just, it doesn't seem like every time I say, well, this is it, like Trae's going to go cold and they're not going to have anything to handle Giannis, and it just doesn't matter. Like, they seem to have an answer for everything, and Nate McMillan is doing a great job adjusting what they're doing. I still don't think they're going to beat the Bucks, but I think this is going to be a closer series than I originally thought after watching last night's game. So yeah, definitely pretty shocked about how it went down.
Yeah, before the series, I said the Bucks in 5 as well, and man, I was listening to Dan Patrick earlier today, and he has kind of been mentioning this a lot, but he's been saying the Hawks don't really know any better. I mean, they're just going out there and playing, and they're not afraid of any team. Like, I mean, imagine this Hawks team in a few years. If they don't win the finals this year, I think they can be contenders for the next few years. And I definitely think Nate McMillan is going to get the job. He's technically the interim, but do you see a scenario where he doesn't get the job?
Zero chance. Like, I think they already removed the tag. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure they've already removed it. But there's zero chance he's not back next year. Even short of Greg Popovich leaving the Spurs and saying, I want to go coach Trae Young, like, I don't see any world where he's left.
Yeah, I think he's done an excellent job, and it's just kind of crazy how The Atlanta Hawks fired Lloyd Pierce, and I believe they had a losing record. I think it was like 14-20 or 16-20. I'm probably wrong in that, but it was somewhere around there. Nate McMillan takes over, and the team is instantly good, makes the playoffs, beats the Knicks, beats the Sixers. It's just crazy how well Nate McMillan has done. Trae Young had 41 points in game 1, but what did you think about his performance? Because it didn't seem like he had his best game.
I think he had 49 points, it was either 47 or 49. The thing is that's what Trae has shown this playoffs, because, he's another one of those players like Devin Booker where, the last year and a little bit this year before the, middle of the season, it was a lot of stats, but no impact. Like they're still losing. He has shown this playoffs that when he needs to do what he needs to do, he is doing. So whenever he's on and he's draining threes and hitting shots left and right, he'll go out there and he'll, punch you in the mouth and do that. But whenever he knows he's off, he's doing a better job of pick and rolls and getting other players involved and creating offensive sets where other players are getting good shots. And then even in game 7 of the series before, he was very off. They were still in the game against the Nets, and just for some reason just could not. Sorry, not the Nets, the Sixers, but they just they couldn't. The Sixers could not put them down for obvious reasons. But Trae Young wasn't playing well, and they were still winning. And then when they needed Trae in the fourth quarter to kind of get them over the hump, he hit a couple of threes in the last part of the fourth quarter that just kind of gave him the last punch they needed. And so he's doing a good job of adjusting on the fly and figuring out what his team needs that night with the scheme that's put in front of them. And that's not something I would have expected him to do before the playoffs. And it's been kind of fun to watch. I hate that he's tied to Luka with everything, because I think if Luka's on this team, they're winning the title hands down. Because this team is built very well around Trae Young, whereas the Mavs team is built very poorly around Luka. But it's just, he's doing so good, and I'm kind of loving the villain bit that he's playing with, going into Madison Square Garden and then going into Philly and just kind of talking his mess. I'm kind of loving that side of him as well.
Where would you rank Trae Young right now? I'm assuming he's somewhere in the top 20, but where would you rank him right now?
Man, I hate that. I don't know. I would say probably low teens maybe right now, but that's only because I want to see this over a whole season. He started off the year hot, but then whenever the NBA started, pulling back how many foul calls he was getting, because he was shooting 15 to 20 free throws a game, which is just asinine, And I think when they change the rules next year, you're probably going to see a little bit of dip in him, because a lot of his points come from the foul hunting, and so which Luka's just as guilty about that too, just to be fair, but. I think you'll see a little bit of dip from that, on top of the fact that he's played so much in the postseason. But he's definitely rising the boards. I don't know, off the top of my head where exactly I put him, but I'd say probably between 15 to 20 right now, but with a lot of room to grow. It's only going to get better from here for him, Ayton, and Luka. All three of those guys are the future with Zion. It's going to be crazy the next few years.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you. I think he's in the top 20, and there's a lot of good young players, especially in this postseason. We've seen so many good efforts from Luka, Trae Young, DeAndre Ayton, even Donovan Mitchell played well in the series before getting hurt. So a lot of these young stars are coming up, and it's fun to watch. As we end the interview, and I'm pretty sure you already have the Suns coming out of the West, but who do you have winning the finals, and how many games do you think it lasts?
I got Bucks Suns in the finals. I think that's a pretty good matchup for both teams, and I think it'll probably, assuming everybody stays healthy, and I think that'll probably go 7 games. And off the top of my head, I'm going to go with the Bucks, because I think Giannis has a next generation talent, but I think the Suns very easily could win this in 7 or even less as well. I think that the Suns are a little bit more banged up, and I'm a little worried about CP3 lasting, with all his injuries and now with the health and safety protocols and how he reacts to coming off that. And so, but this is a wide open race. And I think that, if the Hawks end up upsetting the Bucks, I think they have a very good shot of winning the title as well. So.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. And I think right now the Bucks do have the best chance, I think, according to Vegas, even after losing to the Hawks in game one.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely going to be fun. And, I think the playoff series has been super exciting this year. Okay. So, again, thanks for coming on, Tobin. But do you have anything, before we end the interview, do you have anything in store for the future for your podcast so the listeners can know more about it?
Yeah, so we do basically weekly shows. We're real active in the off seasons. We're both big draft guys. We like to draft a lot. My co-host Brian is really good on scouting stuff, and so we do a lot of bonus episodes in the off season. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at SpreadFloorNBA. But you can find us on any platform for podcasts. And like I said, we have weekly shows. We're a broad NBA. We don't do just Mavs. We do rant about the Mavs a lot. But even if you're not a Mavs fan or not from Dallas Fort Worth, we do have a lot of we talk about everything. And since the NBA never sleeps, we have a lot of stuff to talk about every week. And so I think it's a fun show. We're just two normal guys that want to have fun talking about the NBA, and then hopefully have some non-stuffy media opinions, and we keep it pretty real as well. So,
all right. Again, thanks for coming on, Tobin. Again, don't forget to check out the Spread the Floor podcast. You can find it pretty much anywhere. Also follow them on Instagram and Twitter at Spread the Floor NBA. Thanks for coming on, Tobin. It was great talking the NBA, especially during the playoffs. And again, thanks for coming on.
All right. Thanks, JJ.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Town podcast, or the STP pod for short. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and much more. Also, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Sports Town Podcast. If you want to check out more videos of the Sports Town Podcast, click on the right.